Heard that in a good month and a half. Okay, so this is not usual Mishlei. Usual Mishlei, well, for me, usual Mishlei is chapters 10 through 29. This is the intro to Mishlei, which Rabbi Zimmer holds is the essence of Mishlei, and all the rest is details. And I hold the opposite. So this is intended to be introductory, which is why I'm doing it for like the first, I guess, Mishlei year of the year. Well, it's not really the first Mishlei year of the year, but whatever. Also, though, it's something that I've been wanting to come back to because in Tehillim is a lot about bitachon, and one question I have in general is what is Mishlei, the relation between Mishlei's take on bitachon and Tehillim's. So it's like one personal objective that I have. I know you shouldn't go into learning with objectives, but this is what led me to choose this, you know. And then the other thing is this is a good one to come back to every once in a while because I think it evolves as you do. So let's just see what happens. Okay, what I did is I had forgotten my Maker's Gadol, so I didn't copy it. So I printed this here and the meforshim on the back, and that's so we don't look at the meforshim until ready. Yeah, yeah. All right. So let's. Oh, and the other thing also, unclear from the division of the pesukim whether you're supposed to learn these two in conjunction or separately, like on their own. But because the meforshim that I selected seem to learn them in conjunction, then we're gonna assume that. So let's do what we always do. Translate and ask the questions here. Okay, so b'tach el Hashem b'libecha ve'el binaska al tisha'in. How do you translate that?
Trust to God.
Yeah, trust to Hashem.
In all your heart.
Yeah, I think with is correct. With all of your heart.
And to
Bina.
Oh, yeah. Understand.
Yeah.
Don't
waver.
Waver, interesting. Waver. What shorish are you getting that from? Or what word? I think what because so this is like the word mishan, like mishan we've talked about tzadikim. So do not lean or rely. Rely is how you would translate it, I think, but lean, like a mishan is something that like you lean on. So I'm going to modify one thing. I know the literal translation is L is two, but what would be the more natural sounding way to translate it? I want to trust in Hashem, right? So trust. So we're gonna like, because this is an English language, we're gonna translate it as in, but then keep in mind that it says two, and clearly. Oh, and also, how do you translate the L in the second half? The El Binaska Al Tishain. We didn't even put that phrase together. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And so how do you do the whole phrase? Yeah, don't lean or rely on your understanding, right? So we're going to translate it as trust in Hashem with all your heart, and don't lean or rely on your understanding. And I think that is unanimous in terms of how they translate it. But if there is a nuance for the elephant, then we gotta keep it in mind. But I think it's just a more natural timing to do it that way. Okay, and then the next one, which we're doing this in conjunction, even though we don't know if it's supposed to be. Yeah, in all your ways know him. And the hymn, I think this is also why it reads naturally together, because the hymn is clearly Hashem, right? Which was in the previous pasuk. And he will straighten your ways. Okay. Questions. Let's just do them one at a time, or do questions one at a time. But let's do the first pasuk first. So there's already, if you've had any experience in Mishlei whatsoever, there's already, or any experience in Torah whatsoever, no pressure. There is a major problem with the pasuk that is outstanding, but it's especially outstanding as being in Sefer Mishlei. That's a challenge. Yeah. What's the problem with that though? Like, what is that?
Usually, I mean, that seems like that's the best.
Okay, that's correct. So that's what I meant from Torah. Right? From Torah perspective, obviously, the fact that we were created B'Tselem Elokim seems to be like, that we should rely on our understanding. But what about from a Mishlaic standpoint in terms of
Don't you need to use your understanding?
Oh, that's also true, right? So that's also true, right? So that's a different angle than what I was thinking. But it says in the third pasuk in Mishlei that one of the no, in the second pasuk in Mishlei, that one of the purposes of the book was ladas chachma umuter lahavin imre bina, understand words of understanding. So the book's trying to teach you how to understand. So yes, okay, and the whole purpose of the book is to teach you how to make decisions based on your understanding. I mean, in the four audiences of Mishlei of Na'ar, Pesi, what's the order now? We now go Pesi, Na'ar, right? We switch that in the middle of the year. And then Chacham and Navon is the highest level. So what is a Navon if not someone who is relying on his understanding? Like, did you just have the understanding, just not rely? You know, so the major question or problem is, what does it mean to not rely on your understanding? We are just reading this and getting questions. Okay, so what does it mean to not rely on your understanding? And then how could he say this? We use the word contra because it's fun. Contra Torah and contra Mishlei. Yeah, gotta put in prefixes wherever we can. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's the biggest problem, and that's what we have to figure out. Okay, but what are the other questions in the first one? Oh, and the way we're translating this is we're saying trust in Hashem with all of your heart, and do not lean or rely on your understanding. Yeah. Yeah. See, that's the correct reaction. It's like disgust / disbelief / like Shlomo was betraying me. You know. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what else?
This isn't the Ramban that you were supposed to go on.
Yeah, exactly. The Ramban, the Rambam, the Rashba, Hashem, Moshe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the only thing you miss in terms of the analysis is like, what? You know? Yeah, yeah. All right. What are the other questions? And we're doing just questions first, no answers.
What does it mean betach?
Yes. Okay, that is the other big question, which is what does it mean by betach? And let's like in our minds, we'll just ask the question generally, but like, what does it mean like conceptually? And then what does it mean practically? Like, do you just go like this? Like, you know, like it seems that that's an approach many people take, you know, of like the, is it just like you summon up the bitachon, or is it like, I mean, it's worth putting this into two different questions. So what does it mean by bitachon? Like, okay, so this is another, okay, let's divide into three questions then. Okay, so what does it mean conceptually? Second is practically, how do you do this? And then the third is like, what area is this pasuk talking about?
Right.
Like, yeah, right. So what is the, I don't know, what is the scope of the pasuk, the parameters? Okay. Yeah. All right. Good.
And why is it necessary to say?
Okay, that's also a good question. Right. So what?
Well, yeah. What are not the one they be in your mind?
Okay, yeah. So I actually, it is an interesting thing because usually what we would say for the word lave that it pretty much, not evenly, but I'm saying like it could either mean mind or heart, right? Like in throughout enough heart mind, yes. The here though, I would say it seems to be mind, right? Because why? Because it's instead of your bina, right? Yeah. But at the same, sorry, I meant to apologize at the beginning. I don't know if anyone else who went to the wedding last night, his voice is, yeah. So if I squeak, it's not out of like a fear. It might be that too. But that's not why.
Pasuk minus 5.
Oh, it's true. It's true. Yeah. Yeah. So what did we just say? Oh yeah. Why? So I was saying that it does seem plain shot as its mind, but it also is using the word heart. So like we have to like keep that in the back of our slave. Yeah. All right. So why? But the question is, what does it mean by bechol levav libecha, right? And plus the thing is like the you could say what is the hava amina or la'afuke mai, you know, like is it saying that unless you trust in Hashem with all your heart, then like it's either you're trusting in Hashem with all your heart or you're doing the wrong thing, or is it like a quantitative thing and it's just saying like as much as you can? Like there's certain things in life where like, you know, if you max it out then it's bad for you, and there's certain things where you should max it out, like, you know, Hashem or whatever. Yeah.
So what's Al-Tisha? Like what?
Yeah. Okay, good.
I mean, that's really the question on when you do the talk.
Yeah, but no, it's good to ask it as a separate question. So what does al tisha'in mean? Yeah, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah,
And how are the two halves related?
yeah, and okay, what is the relationship between the two halves? And again, just what was that?
If the question is like, is one inside of the other, or
Yeah,
something
yeah, okay, good. Yeah, let's say okay, so
like two different topics?
yeah, so just what do you call no genre FYI is that most Mishlei pesukim work in opposites. So if it feels like it's opposites, then it's meant to be opposites. But there's many different ways to have configurations of opposites. Of like, is it a mutually exclusive thing? Is there a middle ground? Is it what is the subject within which these are two opposites? Yeah. So are these opposites? So how? Yeah. Okay. Feel like that might cover the major questions for the first part. We have the minor question, which I'll list, even though it's not going to be something that's going to keep us up. Why use the as a preposition L preposition L because it is an unusual usage of it because it means two different things in the pasuk clearly, and you don't lean to something, you lean on something. That's just how leaning works. And trust to something like whatever. All right, yeah.
Maybe it's saying like being noted.
Oh, that's interesting. Words, like, yeah. Okay, yeah. So good question then. Yeah. All right. Then the next one. Well, let's do the questions there also. B'chol derachacha da'ehu v'hu yiyasher orchosecha.
How do you know? So what's your
Y-
or
Yeah. So we'll go that and that. So how in
no,
da'ehu in what manner, right?
no,
Da'ehu
no,
in.
like what's the translation of the
Oh, it's like yeah, yeah, yeah. In all your ways know him, and he will straighten your paths.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean,
Oh, you know
no,
what we should, sorry, this is a side point. You know what we should say? There's the common thing of people say yasher koach, right? But it's really yasher kochacha. We could really say yasher orchosecha to allude to this idea because we want everyone to be Yudei Hashem. Yeah. Oh. All right, let's start the trend. Yeah.
Is he saying that if you know him, then he'll train your path?
Yeah.
Oh, fine.
Yeah.
So then, knowing him is usually learning.
Right. So I'll add to this da'ihu in what manner? Like, does this mean learning, which you would think it does? Something else, right? Yeah.
Also, what kind of like who you share or chotach is the same? Like supernaturally is the same, just like as a result of the thing itself.
Okay, good. So what does it mean by yiyasher or chosecha? Right? Is this like, first of all, what are the or chosecha? Right? Because that could be like your external circumstances, or chosecha, or it could be like does it mean like your midos, like your, like, or I don't know, like your derech or whatever. And then what does it mean, or how is it yiyasher or chosecha? Like, what is the cause and effect relationship here?
Right. So just like the supernatural.
Yeah.
Like an ace.
Is it hashgacha? Is it natural? Some mix. Yeah.
Is it still clear that it's like cause and effect from the first to the second? Like it can be like that the second half is the reason for.
I don't think, can you read it that way? Because I think the vav has to be either an and or a but, and definitely doesn't seem to be but here. So he will in all your ways know him, and well, it's either going to be a cause and effect, or it's going to be like two separate things. And the fact that the first half is something you should do, and the second half is something that he's doing, makes it sound like it's a reciprocal thing, like he's responding to you by doing this. Yeah, I'd be open theoretically to reading it. Otherwise, I just don't see what that would look like. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to throw in the question we asked at the beginning, just because we're working on the assumption that the two pesukim are related. So what is the relationship between the two pesukim? Yeah. Okay, so should we can always add questions later, but should we maybe, since we are starting a little late today? Oh, so we're our you can do whatever you want, but like our approach here is we don't look at meforshim first, and we try to come up with it on our own, and then we look at the meforshim. Yeah, yeah, but that's why I printed it on the back, because it's hard to resist the temptation to. Yeah. All right, so you want to start off with the I guess, yeah. again, we can do either of the pesukim, but let's for today just try to develop our own ideas, and then tomorrow we can actually like look at the meforshim. So what do you say? Where does one begin? I think, Joseph, your question about what's the scope of this is going to be, if not the, obviously it's not the main question, but it's going to be it's a crossroads question, meaning we're going to have to like get some intuition about where this applies in order to answer all the other questions. Like if you say it applies here, you're going to get one set of answers. If you say it,
I mean, like in terms of like business, right?
yeah,
Like just that's not something that I'm necessarily not gonna that I shouldn't rely on my bina on.
right.
You know, like
Yeah.
I should rely on my bina.
Exactly right. Oh, and yeah.
There's a limit to this.
Right. There's definitely a limit to this. And just I think you walked in right after we said this, is that one of the purposes of Mishlei is to give you bina for your decision making. Like that's the stated purpose of Mishlei. And like and business is a good example. There's so many pesukim that talk about how the navon like applies his tabuna and like gets all this good stuff, So yeah, so it's not just that there are limits, it's that it seems like this is the opposite of like what should be done. So we're going to be trying to, in other words, the thrust of what I think you're saying and the intuition that we have here is that like, if anything, it's not like
The talk on everything else.
yeah.
This is the one.
It's like there's a small area, and yet the pasuk sounds like it is talking universally,
Right.
Yeah.
It could be there's two. I mean, it could be a broad and there's two ways to using your.
Right, that's also true. Right, meaning it's not saying don't use your bina, it's saying al tisha'in
Right.
on your bina.
And being a pasuk Hashem is using your bina in the proper way.
Right, meaning okay, so that's a good approach. Hold on a second. There's another pasuk in Mishlei that supports that, which is when in the second chapter when it's talking about the levels of Yiras Hashem, the highest level is Az Havin Yiras Hashem. That just like in regular Mishlei, Tavuna is going to be the highest level of attaining this. And now I know that's Yiras Hashem, but like it stands to reason that like Tavuna is going to be involved in all the ways that you relate to Hashem. So maybe let's start with this then. Let me just restate that. So it's not saying don't use your bina. It's saying don't rely on your bina. So we have to now ask what's the difference between using your bina and relying on your bina, and how can you rely on your bina if you're not? How can you use your bina if you're not relying on it? And then what do you say about the and then you're using your bina in the correct way is for bitachon and Hashem.
Right, which I think is you could say is that you're if you take Hashem as a stand-in for like God created the world. So
right.
If you say that like a pasuk Hashem is someone who is just aware that he is in a world that thinks about him,
right,
and that he is using his bina to understand that. But it's not that his bina is the thing that's giving him success.
Right.
Whatever.
Okay. All right. So this is
the external system.
Okay. So can we take? I endorse this approach, but can we take one step back and maybe just define what bina is? Or sorry, what bitachon is? Not in Hashem. Just what do we mean by bitachon?
Right.
And just another word, if this helps for bitachon, is I think two good translations for bitachon are trust, but then security. Because I think trust has a little bit of a weird connotation in English. Yeah, trust has a weird connotation in English because it's like trust versus mistrust. But security and insecurity, I think, is a better vibe from this. Yeah. What were you gonna say? Were you gonna say something? No. What is security? You feel secure. Yeah, I know. Yeah. You don't feel insecure. Ah. Yeah. I knew what it was. I'd be able to find it. Because security usually does imply some sort of, well, yeah, it's definitely in the psychological, right? It's definitely a feeling.
What? I mean, can you actually? Isn't there?
Oh, okay. There's actually
security.
Yeah, there is. Sorry. In this context, it seems like it's definitely a feeling because this first of all, it's a command, and it's not a command to do with your act. Like if you said take security in a fortress, then that would be directing you to like do things to make yourself protected. But take security in Hashem with all your heart sounds like it's an action of the heart, you know?
It doesn't. It can't be like in the non-emotion. It must be in the emotional realm because usually it's a really good thing to be now.
Yeah, yeah.
So it must be in the emotional realm because in that.
Well, I think this is also support for not for why it uses the word lave here, because if you're correct that you're using your bina for this, but the impact of it is emotional, then lave is a good word. Because if you just said with your seichel, for example, you're not going to get any emotional connotation or implication from that, you know?
Would it be helpful to understand what actual security is, and then?
Oh, that's what I was asking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was asking what is security in general, and then
Not the feeling of security, like the.
Oh, you mean the phenomenon of
Like the
security?
phenomenon.
So you're saying there's a phenomenon of security, then there's the feeling of security, and then there's security in Hashem.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, if I have a house and I'm secure from animals,
right.
emotionally and
The main purpose of a house. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, yeah,
either way,
Yeah.
secure from.
yeah.
Secure from
Interesting. Tell me more. Tell me more. Never mind. Yeah. But yeah, I think security does have to do with harm.
Yeah.
Or some bad thing, and protection.
It's things that aren't in your control. I mean, it's things that are. It's generally just putting a check on reality. I mean,
We narrow that a little bit. That's like I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's saying that I don't control anything.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, okay, there's a lot of things that can harm me.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna block myself out from everything that's outside my control.
Right.
And that way I'm secure.
Right.
So it's a check on the rest.
Okay. So this is the interesting thing, because is that the definition of security, or is that just one example of security? Because it definitely is an example.
If you think of because the thing is that when you think of security, right? Let's say security in your money.
Yeah.
Right? The things you do to achieve security in your money are always let's say the stock market crashes, or
Right.
let's say things are bad.
Right. All outside your control.
It's saying the things outside my control. I'm going to limit. I'm going to extend my control as much as possible.
Right.
Or limit what's outside my control
Right.
as much as possible.
Yeah.
That's generally what security is.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so this is funny because if you see there's gonna be a clash in a second between the approach you're taking and the approach you're taking.
I don't know.
I think. Do you see? Okay. We'll see if we get there. Spoiler alert.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because.
I don't know if we're jumping the gun, but
Right.
go ahead.
Well, just I think the other approach was that relying too much on your bina and recognize, like saying that your bina is the thing that's gonna.
No, so I actually.
Is that a clash or a cume? Development. I don't know.
Because I think that that's actually the same thing. Because really, we have limited understanding, right? And so, what is the security? It's saying, well, I have limited understanding of everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll limit that lack of understanding as much as I can, right? So I have a lack of knowledge of if I'm going to be attacked or attacked by what or like whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right. And so therefore, I'm not going to rely on that. So I actually think that is the same within the same scope.
Okay, so then I think we're starting to put together a parish of this now. So let's just state it. So now let's take everything that's on the table and just try to see. So what is it telling you in each half of the pasuk, and then we'll just see if the answers to the questions and see what we need to develop. So b'tach Hashem b'chol libecha. So we actually didn't finish exploring that question, right? So we said regular security, not the emotion of security. Regular security is taking measures to protect yourself from harms that are outside of your control and extending the sphere of control as much as possible. That was what you're saying. So then what would be the feeling of security, which we're saying the pasuk is talking about because it says b'chol libecha. So the feeling of security then would be what? That's the question we didn't really answer.
Your feeling security is your confidence and your ability to avoid.
Right. You're right. Right. So you have a confidence that the
sphere of control is wide.
Yeah. Right.
So you're able to rely on it. That's what
So you're able to rely on it. Right. So now this is what I was sensing was the clash. So then what would it mean then to take security in Hashem? And you can either say what you said last time, or just, or we could think in line of where we're going now. Because that's what I thought was the clash.
So I think that first of all, security is like adulthood. I mean, you can't really have, without God, of course, you can't really have a security. The thing is that we are really limited.
Right.
Well,
Well, can you even have security in God? I mean, I know he's assuming that, but like that's like that would, I mean,
Well,
that's,
before we get to
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
right? So like security in like physical things, right? Money,
right.
anything can happen.
Anything
You
can happen,
don't
yeah,
have-
right,
You don't have any control,
right,
right? That's what like that's full security. It's kind of a false
right, right.
But
Because I mean, because you cannot extend, just to put it in your terms from before, you can't extend the sphere of control in an absolute way.
Right.
That's just not how,
you
what
couldn't
creatures
extend
we are.
your control to God either.
Right. Yeah, right. So that's why I'm having a hard time seeing where this is going to look like.
so
When we talk about God, we're also like talking about reality being what it is, right?
Yeah,
And,
right. I just want
truth
to,
of reality.
right. I just want to put, this is what you were saying earlier. I just want to put this into Mishlei terms. This we did do it here on earlier in the year, that this is true. Rambam says this in the Mor Nevuchim, that many times the Nevi'im, since Hashem is the cause of everything, right? He created the laws of nature, and he's mashgiach. Then the Nevi'im will sometimes omit mention of the intermediate causes and ascribe the result directly to Hashem. So, for example, when it says that Hashem melts the snow on the mountaintops, it does not mean that he's using the Amud Ha'esh to like heat up the snow. It means that he, I don't know, set up the world where there are seasons that change and the snow melts, or he made the freezing point of water at where it is, So Mishlei does that a lot. Is that because Mishlei is a book of practical decision making, and because the way we approach Mishlei typically, there's two approaches to Mishlei in terms of how much Mishlei talks about Hashgacha Pratis, but everyone, it definitely does talk about like decision making within the laws of nature. So it is a very common Mishleic move to, when it says Hashem, then it is talking about Hashem as the cause of all causes, and it's a way of shorthanding like all of the features of reality, which are Ratzon Hashem.
Right.
So
So-
just wanted to flesh that out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So moving on that, then you say like, oh well, you should be secure in is objective reality, actually the way it should be.
Right.
It is, right.
Yeah.
yeah, but
Wait, also just want to hear the rest of the thought first. Yeah.
Then what happens is then you should not like go towards or lean toward your understanding, right? Don't like be biased in one direction.
Right.
It's your personal
Okay.
understanding. That's what we conflicting with objective way things actually are.
Okay.
the way usually is Bina is actually in an objective way. That's the thing. So like we daven for Bina, right? We're not davening for subjective knowledge.
Right. No, but
Yeah.
you were saying earlier that there is a limit to your Bina.
course.
Right. Right.
You know, it's tough.
But I'm saying
Yeah.
you're saying that you should rely on objective reality,
Yeah.
right? Versus really subjective. You're
Well,
subjective bias.
it's not just don't do Vina though. It's don't lean towards Vina. That sounds like a language. If it's you're leaning towards your personal understanding in contrast with objective reality, that sounds a lot more like you're going towards a bias center around you.
But I don't think it could be biased though, because the thing is, Bina is usually used in an objective way, right? So we use Bina in terms of learning Torah. We use it, which I don't think is subjective thing or a bias, right? Because bias is usually saying an emotional thing, right? Like if it really was Bina, if it really was true, right? Then it wouldn't be subjective. Then it would be a legitimate.
Well, I'd say there's two aspects of subjectivity to your Bina. One is emotional. The other is incompleteness of your knowledge.
Right.
Right. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, most of that. I mean, you could certainly have like be a nabo and have tuna and then find out that you're wrong.
Right. Right.
And it would still be Bina.
Right. And you still like you're using the tool that you have that can perceive that objective reality. It's just that because you're a flawed, limited being, then you're not always going to get it right. But I'm liking this approach in terms of the duality now, because now or the two halves of the pasuk. Because now we're saying that trust in Hashem with all of your heart means that there is an objective reality, and that is something that is secure in the sense that it is going to be 100%.
Yes. Whether
Whether you are grasping it correctly and applying your knowledge correctly, or whether you might be missing something, and then that's what the second half is saying is it's not saying don't rely on it practically. It's saying don't like treat your current perception of the reality as synonymous with the actual reality. There's only one being
or
who's
if they conflict at all, don't favor yours.
right. There's only one being whose thoughts are reality, and that's God. And if you find yourself in that position, then you're basically engaged in self-deification, and that's bad. Yeah. wolves. Yeah. I was also gonna make a bad pun with your house. Your house can protect you from animals, but your bias can't protect you from anything. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so do we have a full idea now?
I wish my bias could have protected me from that.
Yeah.
So the first one that you're saying is really objective reality as a whole, and then Binasa is your fraction.
Yeah, relying on your bina. It says don't rely on your bina. It means don't treat it with the same absoluteness as the objective reality of Ratzon Hashem. There is an objective reality of Ratzon Hashem, which is the only thing that you can. And I still question this, by the way. It's the only thing. It's the only candidate for absolute security, because it is what it is no matter what. As opposed to, let's say, like all the stuff in the the example you were giving before about, like, you have a house or you have, like, your money, that could be lost, but it's only in terms of, like, you had slotted it for a certain use, and then now you lose control of it. But in reality, it's going to go according to Ratzon Hashem 100% of the time. That just might not align with your understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess if I like take security in like the objective
Yeah.
that could go away, and then well, even though that's not my bina, that's an actual objective fact.
Yeah, but your bina is that you're going to keep that money. In other words, objective reality says that anything can happen to that certain things can happen to that money. Now that might be with what you want, and that might be with what someone else wants. But either way, it's that objective reality doesn't say that that money is going to be with you.
I mean, well, so there's two things. One is in the practical decision making. We are applying this to a practical decision making thing largely, right? We'll finish up. But if you replace your example, $500 with 500 Bitcoin, so now what?
Yeah, objectively have.
But it is worth.
Right, exactly.
I mean, right? Yeah, it's objectively worth.
But do you know that your understanding of that is correct? Like, even in terms of your understanding of, like, the fact that I have something of value.
Right.
And, like, the very terms that you're using, like,
Well, I don't know.
Okay, fine, yeah. All right, so let's do this. Let's so just to state one more time at the end, this is the habit we're gonna try to get into for this year, is state what we have at the end so that we can remember the next time. So we have trust in Hashem with all of your heart. We didn't explain the all of your heart yet, but is recognizing that there is only one thing that is a candidate for security, which is the Ratzon Hashem. And then El Binaska Atisha'in does not mean don't use your Bina. Oh, and in order to relate to that absolute reality, you have to use your Bina. That's the only tool we have. But then relying on your Bina, is not relying on your Bina is a recognition of the limit. Say again?
The limited.
Yeah, the limited scope of your own mind and the presence of emotional bias, and the recognition that your bina is not a reflection of the absolute reality. You could just approximate it, and there's always a chance that you could be wrong.
Also, just building like language, L.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. That'd be good if we could answer that.
It's implying movement as opposed to just like leaning on. So it seems to be like almost like metaphorical.
Okay, that's good. See, this is the type of explanation I like for the nuances, because we're not hinging the whole idea on it, but if it reflects the idea, then it's good. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so let's stop here, and then tomorrow let's try for the second pasuk and then the meforshim on both of them. All righty.